So in the first episode of this vlog series, we had cut these logs up with the chainsaw, basically cut them in half, and then I came in here on the bandsaw and we resawed them on the big pieces where I want kind of a nice chunky leg that I'm going to get out of these. I have cut that piece into quarters. We're going to take this over to the jointer and make one side flat, then we'll make another side both flat and at a 90-degree angle to that. And then we can start milling up the other sides on the table saw. Just a little refresher for some of you on how the jointer works. There's an in-feed side and an out-feed table. They are separated by a cutter head, a cylinder with all these little blades on it. Mine happens to be a spiral cutter head. There are different types of cutter heads, but anyway, it is a cylinder with blades on it spinning. The in-feed table is lower than the out-feed table. The out-feed table, same height as these blades. So when I keep this piece of wood pressed against the in-feed table, it's going to start cutting into the wood. As it passes through the wood after it's cut, it will rest on the out-feed table. So we'll use the table saw here to cut some leg blanks, square leg blanks out of these big pieces, out of the chunky pieces. And I might be able to get 2 out of some of these. 2-inch by 2-inch squares is where I'm going to start. Now that they've been squared up, at least 2 edges have been squared up on the jointer. So I ended up with 4 of these pieces that will become my leg blanks. And I cut them, they're about 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. And the next thing I'll do here is run them through the jointer one more time in the planer, get them completely squared up to where they're ready to be legs and they are ready to have some fancy stuff cut out of them next week. Do that in just a second. But before I get there, for those of you who didn't see the last video, I've started a vlog series to give my viewers some more content during these times, give you something else to do when you can't go outside as much, you can't do your normal activities the way you would. And that is kind of a mix, a hodgepodge of things in the shop, projects I'm working on, tool tips. As you see, continuing sort of a mystery project that we jumped into last week, and we'll take bits of that every week. But I also asked viewers for feedback and questions and anything that they would like to see. And I got a couple of DMs on the IG. That's direct messages on the Instagram, A couple of those were really good suggestions that I will incorporate into future vlogs. But one I actually wanted to address this week. And it goes something like this. At Key West Makers, really liked the new vlog. Can't wait for more. And goes on to say, you mentioned your new sander has a feature to eliminate sandpaper marks. I'm getting swirl marks with my hand sander. Any advice? What they're referring to is this new spindle sander that I recently got and talked about in the last video. It spins around and obviously can sand curves, but it's also an oscillating spindle sander, meaning that it moves up and down as it sands. And that's going to help alleviate sandpaper marks in the wood. That's oscillating. If you have one of these disc sanders, not only does it sand by spinning, but it will also orbit, meaning the pad itself is going to move around in different motions within the body. And how good that mechanism is has a lot to do with if you're going to get swirl marks. And different brands, different models have a better mechanism than others. Doesn't mean you need to go out and get yourself a new sander right away. This also comes down to technique, right? Use 2 hands. As you tip it, let it tip side to side. And if it's not even and perfectly flat, it's going to leave swirl marks. If you're having a hard time controlling the sander, if you've got a dial on it, dial down the speed a little bit. It's going to take you longer to sand, but it will be easier to control. Additionally, ease off on the pressure. Pushing down not only makes it more likely to dive in or gouge into the wood, it also is going to just be more likely to leave more swirl marks. Having said all that, let's get to milling these pieces square so they're ready for next week. And hang on till the end because I have something very cool to show you at the wrap up here. It is part of the mystery project. It is something that I found out as I was cutting up some of the wood. I think it's going to be very, very cool. So you might be wondering, hey Chris, why are you running it through the jointer again? Didn't you already have two sides flat and perpendicular to each other before you ran it through the table saw? And I thought I did, but I realized I never squared up the fence of the jointer to the beds of the jointer after its 2,000 to 3,000 mile ride in the back of a pickup truck from Wisconsin to Key West. So I'm going to square those up and joint the two sides again before planing. Well, I have 4 perfectly square 1 3/4, 38-inch long legs. That will be the legs for our mystery project. Maybe starting to lose some of its mystery. It will be a table. And these mahogany logs have some holes in them from damage from bugs, a little bit of a rustic look, and you can see they're starting to turn their beautiful mahogany color. Next week we'll come back and start carving those legs. I've sort of drawn out a little bit of the type of pattern that we're going to put into each of these legs. You'll see the full pattern next week. But while I was sawing up those logs to get the pieces, I came across a few logs that were pretty badly damaged by worms and probably termites. And here is a slice from one of those logs. You can see that the bugs followed the grain of this sort of curvy, twisting log. And you would potentially think about throwing this away, but I've got a great idea. And perhaps this little container of black pigment powder, black onyx pigment powder, gives you a little bit of an idea what I'm going to do with this. This will serve as the top of our table, or these pieces will serve as the basis for the top of the table. However, we are out of time this week, so you're going to have to wait until next week's episode to see us get started on that. So why don't you make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell so you get the alert and you don't miss anything. For now, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, be safe out there. This is Chris Schmidt signing out from Key West.